Welcome to another broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. All past shows are archived. You can find them at ArtistFirst.com. Want to send a question or comment? Hit us up at dj@artistfirst.com. And now here they are, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
It feels so right. Thank you very much, Z-Man. A wonderful introduction, as always.
As always.
And she's Margaret Lyons.
Yes, I am. And you are Michael.
I am Mr. Right. Otherwise known as It Feels Good. No, and tonight's topic is feeling when it's right. And this feels so right now. We were going to play a wonderful introductory theme song, but it didn't feel right.
All right.
All right. See? All right.
All right.
All right, enough of that. This is starting to feel weird. Anyway, so tonight's topic, as I mentioned, is feeling right, and I think is that feeling is variously described in many ways, by people as, kind of, it felt, I knew that whatever decision I was making was right. It felt right, or I knew that, the situation had a number of different things I could do, or a number of different things that I could, different ways I could go, but only one of them, felt right. And this is sort of what we decided we were going to bring up was this sort of, where does this feeling, this idea of a feeling that something is right, come from? How do we develop and how do we understand that something feels right? Because I think we all, and by that I mean everybody, all of us humans on the planet, have sort of an internal sense about when something just feels right. And I think it's not something we all agree upon either. We don't all say, well, all of us think this feels right. But you can find it in, music that comes on at just the perfect moment, or, you look outside and it just, the day feels just perfect, just wonderful, just right. Situations, people that you meet for the first time, it really kind of clicks, it kind of locks in, and they feel comfortable and familiar, and you feel like you know them,
Right.
And then go ahead.
It feels right at the time.
Well, there is that. I mean, but there certainly are lifelong relationships that begin with sort of a, hey, this feels right. This, people can fall in love or fall into a lifelong friendship after only meeting, for the first time. They almost, that idea of liking someone at first sight or loving someone at first sight is that feeling of feels right. It feels like this is going to work right from the beginning.
Mm-hmm. There's the phrase, I think, is a certain rightness to it. It's interesting when you study the way the language uses the word. Exactly.
In this sense, the sense there's right, like right-handed, left-handed, but in this sense, what we're talking about is it has a correctness or a truth to it. A relationship can be false, and then you kind of have you can start out with something that feels like it's going to work, and it ends up not working, and then a relationship can have a certain truth to it. So you have this, this part of this feeling right is feeling that there's a wholesomeness, there's a truth, there's a real, reality to this thing. It has its own.
Strikes true is what you mean. That rightness is striking true. And when it's a true feel or a resonance in your heart, it's like, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Well, that's a great place to go. Again, like language forms. When you when you strike something which is whole and complete, it rings. It rings true. It comes from, almost if you have a bell and the bell has an imperfection or a crack in it, that even if it can't be seen, if you strike that bell, it won't ring true. You will hear, these sort of sour overtones or sour notes coming from it.
Or it can't reach the resonance that it was actually designed for.
Right.
If you think about it scientifically, because what happens is that whole bell shape has got to vibrate, and it usually builds in vibration, rises through the entire bowl-like structure or bell-like structure. And if there's a crack there, that part of it can't ring.
Yeah, you can immediately tell that this thing has a problem. It's similar if you have a piece of ceramic or glass, and if there's any kind of flaw in it, you can ping it, hit it with your finger, and you can hear the fact that it sounds right. And so, to translate into the feeling of rightness, I would say that I could postulate that what we're doing when we are moving ourselves through the world and sensing the world and having the world come in through our senses is we're also at the same time kind of pinging it. We're kind of taking in the information and hitting it with, let's say, a part of ourselves that's looking for resonance, and then listening. It's not really listening. You're not using your ears, but you're listening for the return, for the what happened when I pinged this thing, when I first became aware of it and I kind of gave it my own little sensor hit, my own little ping, and did it ring true? Did it resonate with me?
When you hear someone speaking of a thought or even describing what had happened in an event, and there's a part of you that sits there and goes, no, doesn't ring true. Doesn't sound right.
That's a wonderful analogy, because when you're listening to someone tell a story, whether it's fiction or fact, there's a certain ring of truth to it. And it's an odd thing. It's hard to quantify, because it can be a story about something which is not true. Vampires don't exist and they don't fly out and do all the things. But yet, if the story is told well and told with this ring of truth, of authenticity, you will suspend your disbelief of the fact that this I haven't experienced this in my reality.
Well, this can't be true because I haven't experienced it.
Right, but you're willing to say, well, this has enough elements that ring true that the other phrase is it kind of hangs together. It doesn't have parts which are loose or flimsy or tacked on. They're of a piece. The structure holds, and you're willing to and basically it rings true. It resonates. It informs and entertains. But your other point, which is that when somebody's telling a story about the facts, they're giving testimony, or they're telling you a story of what happened, you do get this kind of feeling if it's being embellished, or if it's being kind of spun so it's more favorable for one and less favorable for another, and the idea of ringing true means that you don't feel like you're being manipulated or you're being given a false impression.
Right. And I think a lot of people are not quite aware of manipulation by another. I mean, most people, when it comes to logic or thinking it through, a little more aware of that. But when it comes to their emotions, now I find that fascinating, because it doesn't necessarily have to be truth, as long as their emotions are hit. And then they say, okay, well, I've been triggered, or I'm feeling this, so therefore it must be true. And you're sitting there going, but that's not ringing true. That's I'm here and I'm seeing something that, I'm being triggered by, and I wanted to be triggered by that, or I want to love this. You're giving me reasons to love it, or I wanted to hate this person, and you're giving me reasons to hate them. It's like, what does your heart say?
Well, and I think even backing up from that, the fact that when you involve people's emotions, their ability to discern is lessened. In other words, once you've in fact, this is true too of a story. Once you involve somebody, once they bought into the story, you can then move it further and further away from what you consider reality or the truth, and they'll still follow because their emotions, they're now emotionally involved with the people,
Connected.
And they're connected, exactly. So to the extent that something becomes closer to you is also to the extent that you will forgive its non-rightness. So there's a barrier, which is, this isn't right, this isn't true. I'm kind of pinging. I don't see it. But then if you break through, let's say we break through on the emotional level, so that now your rather than your judgment or your sense of rightness or your heart involved, it's really just, it's grabbing you and taking you by emotion, or taking you by sort of out, forcing you in essence, or not forcing you, but co-opting you in its story through an emotional link. You've got to, you're one of the team. You've got to be this. So this gets you off center. It gets you out here, no longer being able to feel what's right. Or your sense of rightness gets warped by the fact that you're emotionally involved in something.
Well, a lot of people like to ride the drama wave.
Yeah.
It's just, this is fun, this is exhilarating, this is, it may or may not be enjoyable, but you want to be engaged into that drama wave that sweeps you right along a certain vein. And it's being honest enough to be able to say, well, rightness actually has nothing to do with that.
And I think if you involve people in sort of, red team, blue team, my team, your team, once you've given over a portion of your discernment to, if I'm part of the red team, I have to believe what the red team believes. So you no longer use your feeling of what's right. You kind of cover it over and put blinders on and say, well, someone else says it's right, so it must be right. The team says it's right, so then therefore it's right, and you excuse what you know in your heart, or if you were an individual saying, well, that's not right. Well, that's not right.
Well, it's very similar to when you were in school, okay, and you had the popular crowd, and the popular crowd decided they wanted to be mean to somebody that they didn't know.
Very good example.
And it's like, well, that's not right.
Right. But human beings have a way of kind of stepping around their feeling of what's right based on, what
Acceptance.
seems to, what seems to be popular, or what seems to be, the group mentality. So there's a great kind of bifurcation there about when you were an individual and you have this idea of that's not right or this is right. You're listening to your heart. But when you put your blinders on and you allow yourself to become part of a group, whatever that group is, and you no longer you say, well, whatever the XYZ ABC group says is got to be right, and I'm not going to question it. It becomes, instead of is this right or isn't it right, it becomes it's right because someone else says so, and I don't have to worry about it. It's just right.
Well, the problem with it is you're still trying to find resonance for yourself when you're so young. Okay, what is true for me? And you search for those that you think are similar to you. So if we're all similar and we're all thinking this way, then that must be right. Instead of searching yourself, it's internal to yourself. Is this right?
Yeah.
So looking at something and going, well, my group is doesn't want to do that. So, but I'm not comfortable with that.
Well, and then right there, you have the decision, which can put you into conflict with what you thought you were and what you are, what your decision means that you are. The internal feeling of rightness can become a source of conflict, because if you truly don't feel something is right, you know that there's a disparity between what you are being told to do and is right, or what your group is deciding is right, and what you feel is right. And then people can run into the point where they then have to break away. They say, well, if I trust my feeling, the feeling of rightness, versus what what the group I'm in says is right, I have to break away. That that is a consequence of using your internal feeling of rightness and trusting it, maybe more than the
Yourself.
external.
Yeah, yourself, because you're still learning about that. And in the end, you got to answer to you.
Yeah, I think that takes a lot of courage, though.
Yeah, I think you got to be gone through the dryer drum a few times to realize that when it's not right with your heart, you have no peace.
Also true.
So you'd rather have peace in your heart than the nonsense that goes on with somebody else. It's a very tribal mentality. It's like, we all do this, so, you have to be this way, and if you're not, then you're bad, or you're out, or you're, and if you really trace it down the tribal road, it's called shame. People don't understand that you are actually shaming another person into going against what they internally understand is right and right for them. You don't want them to have that freedom to choose.
Right, exactly. And I think let's come back to the topic, which is we have this internal feeling of rightness, where I think that we could say that we're born with this idea, and then of course you are trained in your culture. You're inculcated in what the culture says is right, or what your current society says is right, and so on. But there's an internal feeling of this is right, or it's not. And I think those external forces can either be in agreement with that or in conflict with it to various degrees. But in the beginning, as you said, you're searching for identity and you're searching for acceptance. And so I think you're willing to trust the external more than the internal voice. And to the extent that they disagree, it may bother you, but unless you have the presence or the courage or the experience, you're not going to necessarily stand up for your internal voice, for this is not right. And what, even though everyone else says it's wrong, I feel that it's right, and I'm going to do what my heart says. So that's a level of maturity, is to come to the point where you can, where the internal feeling of rightness and the trusting of it allows you to say, I don't care what anyone else is saying is right. This is what I think is right. And that is, that's many incredibly heroic or courageous people over the ages have come to that point and made those types of decisions, and sometimes paid a very heavy price for them.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in the end, because of their commitment to that internal feeling of rightness, oftentimes this is where you find the crux points in leading a whole society to a closer approximation of what is truly right.
It can be, yes, that way. for an individual to stand in that respect, there's a conviction that's got to happen deep within inside.
Mm.
And it's not going to matter to them, even though they may be going against popular opinions and voices, and you may be beaten or killed because of it.
Yeah, it takes a lot of courage.
Mm-hmm.
Because to the extent that the society is willing to impose its will about what it thinks it's right.
Mm-hmm. Because the minute a group feels, because in a group everybody believes, okay, you're valuable to be part of the group, so you've got some rights. Some groups, it's not equal rights for everybody. It's like, well, I'm whatever. But the minute the group looks at someone and says, you are not of the group, you are not human in that respect, you are subhuman in some way, and that real ugliness starts rising of what's inside a human being.
Mm.
The minute you basically decide that someone else is less than you, way less than you, and that's when your internal, if you have any character whatsoever, will truly show what's inside of you.
Well, right, and let's take that basic, that sort of basic feeling where the humanity of a person, our own individuality, we feel is right. It's something that is kind of rock foundational to a person. Is that my existence, my humanity, is a right thing that shouldn't be imposed upon. My own right to existence, for argument's sake. And then you see societies which, through one philosophy or another, will start to separate into those who have that right and those who don't. But yet, in truth, we can feel that the person who is being told, the people who are saying it from one group, that we're saying that group doesn't have these rights, they're not really human. We know internally, individually, that that's not right. That sense of injustice, which is based on that foundational sense of what is right or wrong, comes up. But then you are in a situation as an individual. Do I stand up for the right of another because of the affinity of we are the same? All of us are human beings in the world, whether you're A team, B team, red team, blue team. But when blue team says that red team doesn't deserve to live, for argument's sake, the individual person, which doesn't matter whether it's red or blue or A or B, knows that it's wrong, that that's not right, because that person is just, there, but for the grace of God go I. This person is as human as I am, whatever. So you're faced with that becomes a moral dilemma, right?
Yes, it does. And can you live with yourself with whatever decision that you make?
Right. Well, and that's another sense of that's not right. If you subsume to the will of the group, and there have been terrible examples in history where one group has declared that another group is no longer human. And I won't go into specific examples, but then we as a greater human society have punished individuals for having gone along with these kind of group philosophies and said, you should have known this was wrong, regardless of every other, whatever laws were passed, whatever doctrines were written, whatever papers were signed, whatever license was given. The fact that you went along with it, we find reprehensible and punishable, much further down the road. But the difficulty of there's a tremendous difficulty with taking the feeling that it's not right and translating it into action, where you then, in essence, put, in some cases, your life at risk in defying this group, which is saying that this is right, even though we know it's not right. There are many, many examples in history where being a dissenter wasn't just a slap on the wrist and, hey, look, I have these signs. It was like, if you're a dissenter, then you get thrown in with the group which we say isn't human, and your life is now just as worthless as theirs.
Mhm. You see that in other countries where the political party that's won basically takes all the people that were against them, the dissidents, and put them in work camps or rehabilitation camps.
Re-education camps.
Re-education camps.
We will teach you what is right.
Mm-hmm. And as a human being, you sit there and you go, no, that's not right.
Yeah.
You're taking away someone's freedom because they don't agree with you, to the point where you're gonna take their life because they don't agree with you.
Right. And I don't remember who said this, but I believe that the statement I'm going to paraphrase is that to the extent that people are willing to damage you because you disagree is also to the extent that they are not confident that what they are forcing you to believe is right. And what I mean to say is when the threat to believe is believe or die. In other words, either you agree or you die. That's stark of a contrast, That means that they're no longer relying on rightness. This is right, and if you disagree, well, we have to just show you that it's right. This is truly right. They're now no longer believing on some sort of feeling of rightness or even some external.
It has nothing to do with revealing the truth to you. It has everything. It has everything to do with power.
Power and dominance.
And dominance.
And to the extent that that your dissidence, your disagreement with a philosophy risks your existence, is to some extent how to what lengths the philosophy is no longer relying upon truly rightness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But if that goes far afield from understanding that you're born with that sense. I mean, my goodness, that small children will tell you, well, gee, that's not fair.
Yes.
Why did he get 2 and I get 1? That's not fair.
Yes. If you want to look for the one of the best expressions of the human feeling of rightness or fairness, you will find it in a 2-year-old that didn't get the same number of cookies as another 2-year-old. They will tell you about it in great detail. That one's bigger. It has more chocolate chips in it.
Yes.
There's a certain all things being equal, we are looking as human beings for equity. We're saying, well, this person's portion should be the same as mine. We're all hungry. There's food on the table. Why did they get 2 soups and I only got 1? And immediately this instantaneous reaction of that's not right. That's not fair. That's not right. Pops up, and if you're a 2-year-old, you will bang on the table and say, that's not right.
Outrage.
Instant outrage.
It is. It is instant outrage. It's very funny, but
it's funny. But if you then said to that 2-year-old, well, because they're on the A team and you're on the B team, it wouldn't make them any more right to them.
What does that mean? That means nothing.
That means nothing. In any case, so tell you what, let's take a right turn, take a right break, and feeling right break to the studio. And when we come back, we're going to talk more about feeling right.
is a Reaper is the story of 5-year-old Christopher Aaron and his life-changing struggle with leukemia. Winner of both the Indie Bragg Medallion as well as the reader's favorite silver medal for memoir, There is a Reaper has more than 100 Amazon book reviews and a 5-star rating. It has been described as life-changing, spiritual, a must-read. Just released on Audible and iTunes, this memoir is also available in paperback and on Amazon Kindle for only 99 cents. Get your copy of this life-changing memoir today.
The Timeless Esoterica radio program with Dr. Bruce is broadcast on the fourth Monday of every month at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern on ArtistFirst.com. We explore topics including the paranormal, alien life, mysteries, conspiracies, hidden history, oddities, and much more. Each show will feature a special guest with exciting and thought-provoking discussion. Always keep an open mind, an open heart, live forever, and remember Dr. Bruce believes in you.
Hi, this is Minette Lauren, author of Race for the Sun. Do you believe in guardian angels? Check out Book 1 of my Soul Watcher series. It can be found on Amazon.com or anywhere fine books are sold. Go to www.minettelauren.com, and you are listening to the ArtistFirst Radio Network.
Rick Riordan fans, love mythology with plenty of action and humor? Destroyer's Blood is for you. The new fantasy novel by award-winning author Michael Lynes is Book 1 of the adventures of Dev Kalian, the Blood series. Follow Dev and his magic sword Betrayer as they are suddenly attacked and forced to return to Olympus to fight in a war they want no part in. The world of men and gods is about to be destroyed by Zeus's ancient foe, and only Dev and Trey can stop him. The conflict never stops, and the amazing twist will have you on the edge of your seat. Act now while the ebook is on sale for only 99 cents. Destroyer's Blood is available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere. And while you're there, get the free prequel, It's in the Blood, available for a limited time.
Hi, my name is Christina Garlick, and my new book, Nevada Rain, is now available. It's a sci-fi fantasy story for ages 14 and up. I hope you check it out, and of course enjoy. Also, you're listening to the ArtistFirst Radio Network that has a station for everyone.
The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed is the latest book from Michael Lynes, the award-winning author of There is a Reaper. Featuring 13 original stories, this wide-ranging collection has everything. Forbidden love, gods versus demigods, weird invading aliens, sexy seductive artificial intelligence, and unusual passion between the living and the dead. All set amidst fantastic worlds of pain and loss and boundless joy. From the sublime to the macabre to the bittersweet, The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed will leave you breathless with laughter, brimming with tears, trembling with suspense. Available now on Amazon.com, Google Play, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere.
You are listening to the Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. Let's get back to your hosts, Michael and Margaret Lynes.
Oh, it feels so right. And we are back, and this is the second half of the Soul of the Everyman, and tonight's topic is knowing when it feels right, feeling when it knows right, or feeling right when it knows what you're doing stuff. Boy, that didn't feel right. That didn't feel right at all. That's not right.
That's not right.
Well, last half hour we talked a little bit about that sort of internal feeling of rightness, and we did get off into what can happen when, as an adult, when you follow that versus following the group. But I think the thing we ended up with just at the bottom half of the first half hour was that as if you want to see the human, the core of humans' rightness, the thing that we're all born with, line up 3 2-year-olds in a row and give the first one cookie, give the second one 2 cookies, give the third one no cookies. and you will see an example of what? That's not right. They got 1. He got 2. I didn't get any. Because it's kind of intimately tied with this internal feeling of rightness, and what we as we take in information from the world and we kind of ping it to see if it's right, is sort of tied in with the idea of fairness. All things being equal, we have an innate sense of what we think is fair, and it's where you end up with sort of this idea of, well, they have too much, or they don't have enough, or blah, blah, blah. And some of that gets kind of twisted into odd ways with philosophies or doctrines or whatever. But that the reason it's able to be powerful and to be twisted and used is that there is this innate sense of fairness. If we're all equal and we all feel, as human beings, that we have a certain equality, then given no other reasons to the contrary or to the proactive, whether we need it or we don't, if things are being handed out, we all want the same. We want to feel that Johnny and Susie and Georgie and whomever, Jeannie, everyone got the same thing, regardless of whether they were tall or fat or short or skinny or whatever. Now, if you say, well, Johnny got more because Johnny's bigger and he needs it, or you say Susie got XYZ because she loves pink, you can make these distinctions, and you will. But what it is, Margaret, is when you don't feel it's right, you want to know why. Mm-hmm. The instantaneous question is, I didn't get the why did I get the same? And if the question why is not sufficiently answered, you end up with a resentment, with this kind of, well, mm-hmm. Who are they to?
Mm-hmm. Right. And it's, again, something that I'd say all humans are born with. It also is a, just watching little ones, tiny, small ones that are trying to figure out how to move their body, watching older ones moving around the room, and they can't do that, or a little one watches an older brother being able to reach up and turn a doorknob, but when they get over there, they can't do the same. It's like, well, it's not, to them, it's like, that's not right. Doesn't seem fair, but the truth of the matter is, I'm not able to do it.
Right.
So that sequence of understanding that, well, it's because it's not fair that you can't open the door. But the truth is, you really just can't.
Well, but I've heard this said, it's not fair, they're bigger. There's almost an idea that regardless of if you said that everything is equal, then there can still be these kinds of, well, it's not fair, he's tall. It's like, well, you can't help being tall, but yet there still can be this feeling of why can't I also do? So there's.
Well, but that's what I mean. This isn't part of the growth process. It just makes the littler one try harder. It's like, I'm going to do that now because I know they can do that, so I'm going to do this. Right. Understanding that there are points in your growth that you're just going to have to wait and learn how to develop a skill set, how to learn how to take the next step.
Well, and I think there's also, in that same vein, when you have a group which is together as, let's say a family group, there's a balancing act which is happening, even though there are disparities in height and ability and aptitude or whatever, where you will hear this said all the time, help your brother and or sister do that. They're too little to, or don't be rough because you're bigger, or help them because they're small. So even though we know things are quote unquote everybody's the same, we are already right away given the idea that the right can also tilt a little bit based on whether somebody through no fault of their own can't do or can do. So you can say, well, we should all be able to go and make our own breakfast. Well, Johnny can't because Johnny's only 2, so help Johnny make his breakfast. Well, so the right is everyone has to eat, the basic, we all have to eat. But the that I can do something for myself doesn't mean that I shouldn't help, the other person who also needs to eat. So you start to get this balancing act of what's right, not just for me, but also in the sort of people that are in my orbit, or that I'm sort of semi-responsible for, or semi. So you right away get this kind of education in what I can do, and then what I might have to help someone else do. That becomes part of the right, the right balancing act that you have to do as part of this larger, multi-person group, if you will.
Well, if you're looking at it in terms of family, this is your first lesson in learning how to do that interaction in life. Mm-hmm. There's certain realities of some people just can't do what you can do. Also, as a baseline understanding that, well, everybody should eat, but not everybody eats the same amount. Everybody has a right to play with the toy. You're just going to have to learn to take turns.
Yeah.
But that's sort of describing events as opposed to actually being at a point where you know whether or not you're making a decision one way or the other. Is this right or is it not right? And the family establishes that group. Okay, this is where you're learning that back and forth. When you get into, like, as we said before, that school and the groups that form there, it's a different dynamic because usually these are children that are around the same age. Doesn't mean that there's maturity.
Well, yeah. Going back to the first education of when you start out, and this was sort of a different way to come to this sort of, you're only concerned with you and what's right for you as a child or an infant, and then you start to broaden that and have to balance. Well, this is right for me, but I've been also tasked with making sure that it's right for me and the other, or me and a couple others.
My sibs.
My sibs. So the rightness of something also becomes sort of the fairness of it, not just for me, but for a couple of people outside of me. And I think that there's a certain point that works, and then there's a certain point at which that can become reversed and turn into don't do it because you need it, do it because I need it. You no longer have the idea of your will to do something versus someone else's will for you to do something. And there's a lovely kind of sort of continuity there. There's a singular point of I, and there's sort of an more open group of me and my sibs, or me and my parents and my family. But then as it gets, the farther away it gets from you, the more tricky it becomes as to what's right. To the extent that somebody has, they have.
You mean the concept, right? at that point. You're expanding your concept of what you are trying to understand as right.
Yeah, the rightness of something.
Mm-hmm. And that can be very tricky because you learn internally that there is a certain resonance, a rightness from the beginning. But you're entering into a place where what appears to be happening isn't always what it appears.
That's true. And I think that there are certain things, and it starts to sound like a list, but there are certain things which always are yours and always are yours to decide. And then there are certain things which become more of a responsibility of more than just you. And then there are things that, as the farther away you get, that you have to say, well, look, no matter what, no matter how many others there are involved in this situation, the more important thing is what I think is right. And that's what we were talking about last half hour, which is when a society imposes upon individuals who are part of that society something which they know not to be right. You have a moral dilemma, a decision to make. But those first decisions, the first ones, whether it's right for me or whether it's right for the group that I'm in, which is the family group, if you will, have to also inform that when it gets into a much larger situation where you have whole cultures, where a culture can be acting in a way that is wrong, wrong at the level of humanity. And that idea of what's right or wrong there becomes, and you run right into philosophy and morals and really sometimes the way laws and justice are meted out. The foundation is here, but it gets very diffuse as it moves away from you. It gets very
it gets very mental
and a lot less clear cut, and many times injustices and things which we know are wrong are perpetrated in the name of doing right, where right has become this overarching sort of societal, this is right, whether you agree or not. This is what we're doing.
Right.
And I think at that point that you as the 2-year-old you, or as the you that is listening to your internal right voice, has to be strong enough to say that it isn't right, because we aren't respecting the basics, which is we're all human beings and we all have the right to exist, or we all have the right to disagree, or
we all have free will.
We all have free will, and
we should be able to choose according to how we feel we need to choose. And that should be the baseline awareness, understanding that if something is taking away your right to choose, you had better look at it very closely.
Yeah.
Because the things that want to take away your right to choose are making you subhuman.
I think we've kind of backed into, there's the first right, which is the right to exist, and then there's the second right, which is the right to choose freely. And the basic of the choose freely is the right to be free. So existence and freedom are the ones that are really close. Those are where we find our rightness. If something's causing others to not exist, we know it's not right. And those can be food, it can be shelter, it can be all kinds of things. But the things you need to exist, if you're taking them away from people, we know that's not right. And then if you're taking away people's right to be free or to choose, we right at our core level, that's not right. You can't force them to eat those cookies. Well, cookies are good. You must eat your cookies. No, I mean, the point is you can't take away the individual's rights to be free without incredible amounts of reasons to do so. And we do incarcerate people, and people are their right to be free is taken away from them because of actions that they've done. And we go through a whole series of ridiculous amounts of stuff to come to that thing. And we also as a society take people's right to live away. again, through a tremendous process, because those are the basic ones. The right to exist and the right to choose freely, to be free, are right there at the core of the ones we know we have right at the beginning. This isn't right. It means it's not, it's taking away my freedom. It's taking away my things I need to live. Not right.
And just the process by which that's done. So that has always, or should have always, been a question for each individual. I remember wrestling with that in school. They would put you through situations to think about. It's like thinking experiments. What would you do when or if? And sometimes they were just outrageous situations, but regardless. And it was part of the critical thinking aspect of being taught. You were being taught how to think critically. Just, honestly, I just don't see that nowadays.
Well, without making too deep of a societal dive, it's very important to have the ability to encourage. Well, what does critical thinking encourage? It really encourages holding the rules, which are kind of given as de facto, to the test of, is it right? So you take a society, if it is itself right, should be able to withstand scrutiny.
Right.
In other words, you should be able to take the precepts of the society, whatever they are, and boil them down to that they're defending the right of existence and the right of free choice. And that if you have a society which doesn't allow those types of boiling downs, that can't withstand that when confronted by scrutiny or critical thinking, reacts with our way or the highway, do it or die, we know that's not right, because instead of sitting in the greater society rightness on its foundation of individual rightness, it is moved away from that into, we don't care about the rightness, we care about the rules.
Right.
It's our rule is you will wear your underwear on the outside of your pants every day, and if you don't, you're going to die. Well, that's a silly example, but to the extent that a society can't take the critical thinking, underwear on the outside doesn't serve any purpose, die. That we know that society is not right. It's a society which is now toxic because it's taking the rule or the law and putting it in place of the right or the individual, basic individual right. So when societies, as you said, when you put critical thinking into the mix, it's question, the old question authority. Well, that was kind of hijacked, but in essence, what it really is saying is apply the precepts of is it right to the rule which says do this. As if it's do this, regardless of whether it's right or wrong, you already know that rule can't stand scrutiny.
Right. And usually it has nothing to do with being fair or being right. It's just, it is either based in anger or fear or...
Yeah, control.
And the lust after power, when you get to the core of it, it usually is because you don't want anyone else to have any power over you. It's a fear.
Yes. And, to the extent that we find that despotism or that tyranny is not right, it's because the ones who are imposing their will are saying that the ones who are having their will taken away, their freedom taken away, are not equal anymore. We're saying, look, by my rule, you have to do everything I say. So therefore, you're my chattel, you're my slave. You are no longer, you are subhuman. And then
you in other words, you don't have the ability to make any decision whatsoever.
Right.
You are incapable of that. So because of that, because you can't, I deem that you are incapable of making a right decision, I have to take over that position, which means that they've taken away part of your humanity.
Right. You said it in the first half hour. As societies do this, they define a certain group as being human, and the other rest of the world, universe, whatever, as not human, subhuman.
So therefore, they should be controlled,
disposed of, done, whatever. And right away when you say those words, right, something in you goes, "That's not right.
That's not right.
That's not right." But that's what, you know, the skill of critical thinking is essential, because critical thinking says, well, you know, you're not any better than they are. Why should you get to tell them what to do? And if the rule can't, if the answer to that is shut up or die,
or the answer is, well, I'm better educated, or I can think better than you, and it's like, well, no, that's not good enough.
That's not good enough, because again, it comes down to the ability of the rightness of freedom is the freedom to make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
The rightness of freedom is the freedom to be wrong. You know, the rightness of existence is the right to exist whether somebody thinks you should or not. You know, somebody else's. So those basic rights, a society has to kind of rest upon them, or we say it's not right. If the society rests on the fact that some have the right to live and some don't, even though we all know that these are all the same, they are all people, they're all human, we right away know that society can't stand critical thinking, can't stand scrutiny. It has an unrightness to it. It has a wrongness to it that we immediately abhor at a heart level, at a
right.
This doesn't ring true level.
Right. And you do not accept it. You don't receive it. It's like, that's not right. Can't be done that way.
Right. But at the basic level, it's because you say they're the same as me. That means that I want to be free. They want to be free. They're the same as me. I want to live. They want to live. And as soon as you say they're not the same as me, the first critical thinking question is, like every 2-year-old, why? Why are they not the same? You know? And if you can't answer that, then it's not true. It's not right anymore.
If you answer it with a prejudice, if you answer it with a preconceived notion,
yes,
then again, you have to watch, because you're making somebody else subhuman.
Exactly.
Is that what really, if you think about it, is that what you want other people to do to you?
Right. But that's the critical thinking why. And then if that, whatever that group is, can't stand, if the question why results in the threat, shut up or die, don't ask why, just obey, we know we have something that's not right. Because right things can always answer why, you know. You may not like the answer why, but it should have that ring of right, of truth, you know. It should ring true. The why answer should be ring true, you know. And that's where you end up with societies which may not be perfect, certainly aren't perfect, but they have that ability to withstand scrutiny and be right at their core.
It's a... Huh? Oh, all right. We apparently have reached the end of our show.
It doesn't feel right. Yes, and I'm Michael Lyons.
And I'm Margaret. And thank you for listening.